Biblical Studies 2035 Cambridge O-Level Exams. Paper 1, Topic 4, God as King. Hello dear students, this is your course coordinator Azor and your instructor Dr. Ruj Ernest. Today for Topic 4 of Paper 1, we will be focusing on 1 Samuel chapter 16, first 13 verses, 1 Samuel chapter 17, 2 Samuel chapter 7 and Isaiah chapter 9 verse 2 to 7. So in 1 Samuel chapter 13, there is a dialogue between Prophet Samuel and God, that God is asking Prophet Samuel to stop mourning over King Saul. So, who was the king at that time? The king was King Saul, son of Kish. Kish was his father's name. So, what happened that he was the first king, King Saul, but King Saul had done some two to three things which were against the will of God. So eventually, God rejected him. And in this chapter, God is asking Samuel the prophet to go to Jesse. And who is Jesse? Jesse is a person who lives in Ephrathah city of Bethlehem. So, who is Jesse? Jesse was a Ephrathite of Bethlehem and from the area of Judea. And what happens that Jesse has 8 sons. So when Samuel goes and visits his sons, now the three eldest sons have been mentioned: Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah. So when Samuel the prophet goes and he takes a heifer with him, and what is the purpose of heifer? So Azor and I have mentioned it clearly in our notes. We have made and compiled the notes in quite a detail, so you are going to like it. And if you have less time for your exams left, I would recommend you to buy my notes. So moving forward, uh, when Samuel the prophet looks at different sons, observes them, but God does not approve of any of the 6 sons. So what happens that Samuel the prophet asks Jesse about any other son that is remaining, and Jesse says, yes, the youngest one is David, who has gone to keep the sheep because David was a shepherd. And so, what happens that when David comes, there is a specific appearance of David mentioned in this chapter 16 of the first 13 verses, and you must note it down because this was previously asked as an exam question. And so when Samuel the prophet sees David, then God approves of David, and Samuel the prophet, what he does, he anoints David with the oil. So what happened that David is appointed as a king. So in 1 Samuel chapter 17, there is a battle between King David and Goliath. And these are some of the character traits that I have mentioned about King David. You may note them down. Now in chapter 17, we can see that where was the Israelites camping, and at which place were the Philistines camping. So Philistines were camping, as you can see in the upper right portion of the slide. They were camping in Ephes Demim between Soko and Ezekah. However, the Israelites were camping at the top left corner of the slide. You can see where the Saul's camp is mentioned. The Israelites were camping here in the valley of Elah. So in the next slide, you can also see it very clearly. Israel's camp has been mentioned towards the right side, and Philistine's camp is mentioned on the left side. And in the red encircling portion, you can see that here the battle happened between David and Goliath. So both the armies were facing each other, which was quite usual in the wars. So near the green arrow, you can see the area of Bethlehem where it was David's home, and David's three eldest brothers have gone and joined King Saul in the army. And there was, with the green arrow, you can see the valley of Elah, and then there is also an Israel's camp mentioned in the green writing, where there are many scattered green dots we can see, and between the Israel's camp and Philistines camp, where the Philistine camp is mentioned in the blue writing, and between it there is a valley of Elah in the maroon. However, um, we can see a red encircling portion with the name of the Gath. This was an area from where giant Goliath belonged. So, in the scripture, it is mentioned numerous times that Goliath from Gath. So, he was from this area. And we can also see another area um, mentioned with the blue arrow named as Ekron. So, when David defeated Goliath, the Philistine army ran to Gath and Ekron, where they were chased by the Israelites' army and killed. So, in the chapter 17, in the first starting verses, we can see the appearance of Goliath from Gath, and his height is mentioned, which was almost 9 feet, more than 9 feet. And then we can also see the other things, that his weapon items that he was wearing. So, you may take notes. If you want ready-made notes, you may contact on my email address, which Azor and I have compiled for you. So, watching this all scene, what happened was the David David's duty, as I mentioned, that David's eldest three brothers had gone to war with the Philistines army, and but what happened with David? David was the younger son, so his duty was to keep the sheep of his family and also to provide his brothers and with grain, loaves of bread, and cheese. So what happened that he used to move from his house towards valley of Elah, where there was Israel's camp, and it was almost a complete 1 day's journey. So so it happened that when David went to like provide the supplies, so he what happened that the war was not a 1 day war. The war was going on for many days, and it was being continued. Sometimes the Israelites were winning, sometimes the Philistines were winning the war. So what happened that it was ongoing, it was being continued. So one day David left his sheep to the keeper and supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, and was he because he was curious that about his brothers, and what was the outcome of the fight. He wanted to see. So it happened in verse number 20 that whenever Goliath would come from the Philistine camp, then Israelites would flee away. They were very much afraid of Goliath from Gath. And what was Goliath doing? Goliath was every time he was coming and he was speaking ill of God. When David heard all this ill speaking, he was very much disturbed. So he asked the Israelites, "What will happen? Uh, how the person is going to be rewarded? Who would defeat this giant?" So the Israelites told him that the man who kills the giant, the king will marry his daughter to him, and also his family would be given exemption from all the taxes. So what happened when Eliab heard of this? He became angry to David because he did not want David to go to war. But David asked him that what wrong have I done? What have I done now? Means that I haven't done anything wrong. Now later on in the verses from 34 to 38, we can see that David is meeting with King Saul and persuading him to go to fight with the Goliath from the Gath, uh, Goliath from Gath. But um, Saul first he does not agree, but later on, I think it was yes, because it was God's plan. So Saul agreed to David and gave him his armor and weaponry items, but David could not move in those items as he was a little kid. So David, what did he do? He only took his staff and five smooth stones and a sling. So now the battle happens. David struck Goliath with his sling and only one stone. And before that, there is a dialogue between David and Goliath. When Goliath saw David, he said, "Am I a dog that you come up with to fight with me with sticks?" And David says that you come to me with weapons, and I come to you in the name of the Lord of the host. So this is how he struck with only one stone that um, struck Goliath on his forehead, and he fell on his face. So this is how chapter 17 ends. And later on, David took the sword of the same giant and cut his head through his sword. Now, moving towards Second Samuel chapter 7. Now, this Second Samuel chapter 7 is about David and Nathan's dialogue. Now, who is Nathan? Nathan is another prophet. Now, King David, he wants to make a temple for the Lord. But Lord, through prophet Nathan, asks David that he does not want him to make a temple for him because it was God's divine plan that he wanted David's son Solomon to make a temple for him. So later on, God makes a covenant with David in from verse 12 to 16. Now you may outline all these points by reading the scripture. And once again, I would recommend you to buy my notes because Azur and I have already taken all the pain and compiled them for you. And chapter 7 of 2nd Samuel ends with the thanksgiving prayer of David. Now, this whole topic 4, God as King, is a very favorite topic of the examiner, and he has asked many questions like uh, covenant of God with David, thanksgiving prayer, appearance of Goliath from Gath, what was the dialogue of David with the giant. This is also really important. It has not been asked in the previous exam paper, but I believe that it is quite important. So you must prepare extensively for this topic. Now, students, moving towards Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2 to 7. Now, I have broken the verses. From first, we will study from verse 2 to 5 and then the last two verses because all these from verse 2 to 5 is giving a different point of view, and verse 6 and 7 are giving a different context. So what is the context of verse 2 to 5 is that Israelites were under the war of the Assyrian empire, and they were under Assyrian oppression. So God asks them that he will deliver them um, from this army and from this oppression of war, and God is telling them through the prophet Isaiah. So, as per Isaiah, he's saying that the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. So, what is and living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. So, what is this darkness? And it is a shadow of death. It means complete darkness, and great light is like God's blessing and presence. Then in verse 3, God is saying that after deliverance, He will give them different kinds of happiness, different forms of joy, as the people who rejoice at harvest. Who rejoice at harvest? The farmer people or the agriculture people, and as the warriors rejoice when they divide the plunder or looted items that they have looted from war. So this is a way of rejoicing for the warriors. So in this way, God will give joy to his people. And in the verse number 4, for as in the day of Midian's defeat. So what is a Midian? Midian was an area where, if you remember from my last Exodus slide, that Moses he fled from Egypt to the area of Midian. So in the area of Midian, uh, what happened that later on in Judges 6 to 8, if you want to study, I would recommend you to study Judges 6 to 8 along with this Isaiah topic. Judges chapter 6, 7, and 8, what happens is that God is giving victory to Gideon over Midianites with only 300 men. So this is a clean victory. And what is Midian? Midian is a present northwest Saudi Arabia. So God says that like I gave victory to Gideon over Midian. So, in this way, I will shatter the yoke that burdens them, and the bar that is across their shoulders, and the rod of the oppressor. So, I will shatter all three things. And in verse number 5, there is an account of the warriors' boot used in battle and garments rolled in blood and everything for the war, that they will be fuel for the fire. Like God will destroy everything completely. And in the next slide, from verse 6 to 7, there is a prophecy about Jesus Christ. And the writings which I have mentioned in pink, they are the four titles given to Jesus Christ. If you cannot remember in English, which I may read out to you: Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace, you may like remember them in Urdu, which we have heard many times. This chapter is really very important for the Christmas point of view, which is repeated again and again on every Christmas. So I may read out the Urdu titles for you: Ajib Mushir, Wonderful Counselor; Khudai Qadir, Mighty God; Abdiyat Kabab, Everlasting Father; and Prince of Peace, Salamti Ka Shehzada. So, and these are the four titles that have been asked in the exam paper as well, Cambridge exam paper. So you must remember them. And later on in the seventh verse, it has been asked in the examiner that after the birth of Jesus Christ, what will happen? So I have highlighted in brown. You can see that there will be no end to his government and peace. He will reign on David's throne. There will be justice and righteousness, and the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this for him forever and ever. So this is all for topic 4, students. If you want to buy my notes, which are highly recommended, so that Azor and I have compiled for you for both paper 1 and paper 2, I will recommend you again and again to buy my notes, because in this way your preparation will become quite easy. And otherwise, uh, if you want to spend time to compile your own notes, this is also a good idea. But in this way, what will happen that a lot of time will be wasted towards this whole exercise. And as O level students, you also have to prepare exams. You have to might be need assistance for other subjects, and there are also many other subjects going on. So I would recommend you to buy my notes. So students, I in the next slide I have come up, and I would leave you with this evaluation marks question that you may practice for yourself: that what is the extent to which God is a king? This is also an exam based question. If you want help with the evaluation based question, then once again I would recommend you to buy my notes, as in my notes I have not even focused on knowledge based question, but also understanding and various different kinds of evaluation based questions. So thank you so much, students. If you enjoyed my slides, give me a thumbs up. That's all for today. Bye bye.